Well, you start adding that in with all your other efforts. And those percentages can leap up to almost 24% when you've got your digital marketing hit it. You've got phone calls following it up. There's exposure somewhere. They're being hit by all those angles that you're talking about. And then you have your cross-sell and upsell your clients, which is a no-brainer. Anybody who hears this, if you're not doing a mailer at all, at least cross-sell and upsell your current clientele and tell them about the other things you have. Because I'll get pigeonholed. At Ultraprint, I once asked a client, we've done all this printing for you, but we've never done your envelopes. And she looked at me, 15 years of doing business, and she said, I didn't know envelopes.
All right, we are recording. Hi, Devin. How's it going today?
I'm doing very well. How about you, Brett?
Doing well. Thanks for coming on. So Devin is, I would say, you clarified to me that you weren't necessarily the owner anymore, but you were the operator of MailStar, which is a local direct mail business here, direct mail marketing business. So why don't you go ahead and so I don't screw it up and say what you do incorrectly. Why don't you go ahead and just give a brief overview of your business and then maybe get into a little bit about how you started.
Sure. So MailStar, as you can tell by the name, is very mail heavy. It's a direct mail house initially, and that'll kind of lead into my past a little bit, how it became a commercial printing company, which is what it is now. And we offer full service graphic design. We have a graphic design team. Not necessarily related with production, so we do a lot of design we don't even produce. We'll do it for people that are going to take it elsewhere also. We do digital printing, so that's obviously due to the variable data aspects that we are involved in. Digital print is our main source of duplication, and then we have our direct mail, which is our cornerstone. It's still our bedrock of most of the work we do. And then we're into wide format, which eases into that commercial market a little bit more, where your banners, A-frame signs, anything rigid based we can print on.
Awesome. So how did you first start off? Like, was this a passion of yours that happened before you even started, or did you grow into it?
Growing into it is actually the perfect way to place it. It was a family business. So my dad started a company called Copy King 47 years ago. As it evolved into more of a commercial, so 47 years ago, there were no copy centers, right? So as those developed, he had to rebrand it and called it Ultraprint because people were coming in wanting to make some copies, and he was a commercial printing company. I grew up in the business. I was running presses at age 12 and 13, doing bindery when I was 9 and 10, doing deliveries as soon as I had a driver's license. So I wanted to get away from it because, family business thing. And I went to school for business and marketing. And while I was there, I worked for the college's print shop. I was the production manager there. So I developed an appreciation for the trade along with my marketing degree. It seemed to go hand in hand. So as I matured and learned under somebody else, when my dad invited me back after I graduated, I came back there professionally, and that was 22 years ago.
Okay.
Obviously, I grew through those 22 years with technology and things of that nature. 4 years ago, I bought him out, and last year, MailStar approached me to buy me out, which is how I became part of the MailStar team.
Awesome. Yeah, maybe you could talk a little bit about that transition, going from, privately owned to the MailStar transition, what that entailed and what that means now for your business. Yeah,
so when I was Ultraprint was a smaller shop. It was maybe a $300,000 shop, which would be definitely in the terms of small. And MailStar was my vendor. So they were much bigger, 4 or 5 times bigger in sales volume. And because they wanted to go into the commercial market, they approached me and said, hey, have you ever thought of merging? And I had been talking to other smaller print shops wanting to do a merge and get us all together under one umbrella, become $1 million shop and really go at it. Everyone was scared to move. So when MailStar approached me, it was already being thought about. So it wasn't like, oh, what am I going to do? I've already been trying to do something like that to bring things to the next level, not to use a overused term. But I thought that was the best opportunity for both my clients and potential future clients. So it took about a month and a half of discussions back and forth with the financials, and then I was then brought on board. It was more of a buying of the client list, and me, if you will, a sign-on bonus, and then we put Ultra Print down. The initial beginning was challenging because one of the things that I was so appealed and drawn to that appealed to me was MailStar's wonderful workflow program, and they had a full team. My shop had me and 2 other people, and we got 12 people. We've got departments. We've got it's very well organized here, and it appealed to me. But what I had realized is when you're doing something yourself for so long, you become a little bit of a power freak, and you want your hands into everything, and it's very hard to learning to communicate with the other departments effectively so that they could do their job properly. Was a challenge at first because for so long I would just do it. I would talk to the client, I would take the concept, we'd work out the design, we'd go to production. When I'm doing the bindery, I designed it, I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And that dialogue had never happened other than just automatic muscle memory. So yeah, that was challenging for me. Learning to work with a team for me was challenging. Now, love it. I can't even imagine doing it all myself again. But it was that was probably the most challenging thing, is just relinquishing some of that power to the team to make their own decisions, empowering them to possibly screw up on something, and that was okay because it was part of the learning curve. And that's what I was there for too, is help them develop that commercial print mindset.
Yeah, did they bring along to you physical, like local employees, or is it like are the employees that you're talking about, the team, are they remote? Do they work remote?
Nope, we have a full facility out in Gates, Chilai, the west side of Rochester. So we everyone's in house. So we have everything we offer that I mentioned in our 4 pillars is right on site. So It is very cool. I mean, I can just get up and go see what is happening if I was concerned enough, but I had to train myself not to, because there's no way to do it kind of halfway, right? You have to learn to trust the team and trust the people. And they still will bring me things when they have a question. If they think, like, we just got a new high-speed coil binding machine, so we can do larger volumes of coil bound manuals. Well, they wanted to make sure that it was okay. What they were doing was okay. The end product was okay. It was cinching properly at the end. And that's when they would come to me. But for the most part, there's total trust between me and the team and how they're producing the product.
Awesome. Yeah, forgive my ignorance. So is MailStar, is this the sole entity of MailStar, or are they like a franchise in your one?
It is a sole entity. It was started 31 years ago by Ron and Kathy Labrosi, and they're still working in it. They're doing something remote now. They're at their summer home, but they're back here all the time. It's a very owner involved business, and they're one of the ones that was just hammering into me. Trust the workflow program. Our workflow program. If you called up with a job, I can pull up everything right here and say, even if I didn't talk to you about it, and I have all the notes, all the emails. Another thing that I was pretty bad at first was making all my notes, being very detailed, so that when Emily at the front desk gets that phone call, she can answer the question because everything is right there. In the past, it was just me. My clients had my cell number. Call me on a Saturday because you need envelopes next week. It was an okay thing, and that had to stop, especially the volume and the size of the business I was entering into.
Yeah, so on like the marketing side of it, you and I have spoke before, and there's this misconception historically that direct mail is kind of just you send it out and you sort of hope for the best, and there's not really any analytics or anything. But you squashed that pretty quick in our, when we talked before. Maybe you can get into a little bit about that process. You talked about the productivity software that you have, workflow software. How does that help? And then some of the other, statistics were to me pretty even surprising that you'd be able to come up with those, just within direct mail, as opposed to digital, which I'm familiar with, or some other, marketing KPIs.
Yeah, and I think that the first thing I want to mention, which I think I went right into when we first met, was back in the day, direct mail and digital marketing were adversaries. They flung mud at each other. Don't do it because of this percentage, and then the other one would return volley, and it's just ridiculous. They enhance each other. you should be doing both. There's no, if you're doing a direct mail piece, the next question I ask, what else are you doing to make this more effective?
Sure.
I don't want you to walk away from this saying direct mail doesn't work and MailStar did a terrible job. I don't want that. I want it to work for you. I want you to sell a product through it. I want your ROI to come back to you, and I want you to call me in 3 months for the next mailer. So, so statistically, before I get into the statistics, I like to point out people just the very simplest of natures on how to realize that direct mail works. If you look at your direct mail and you see people like HelloFresh and Wegmans and True Green and all these things landing in your mailbox, these companies have massive marketing teams working to realize what works best when they send it out.
Right.
These companies would not be doing this if they were not going to get a return on it, bar none. Absolutely not. So pay attention to the mail that you're getting, because that tells you a lot of, is this an effective marketing tool? The next question I generally ask is, have you done a direct mail piece before? And one of two answers, yes or no. No, the reason is generally it's daunting. I don't know how to get into it. I don't know what zip code to hit. We don't need to worry about that because we can target different demographics. The next answer would be yes. Then I ask, did it work? And generally the answer is no. And I'll say, you did it wrong. Because it only didn't work because you did it wrong. And there's two reasons you did it wrong. You carpeted a zip code, and that's just ridiculous. We can hit so specific demographics, right? We can do household income. We can do size of the lot. We can do how many kids they have in there. We can have if they have a boat, if they have a pool, do they have a pet? There's just so many demographics you can get into from the B2C. And the B2B is very similar. You know, average sales of the place, the average number of employees they have, the different industries they're in. So your marketing piece can contain the content to talk to those generalized people that are your target market. So when they've done either they've done the zip code thing or they've done one time, which I'm at the point now where if someone wants to do one-time mailer, unless it's a buy one get one free special for next weekend or a pizza place, don't do one mailer.
It's almost like the Facebook boost button on the digital side. I have businesses come to me all the time and they're like, oh, I boosted my post for $100. Why isn't it? It never worked for me, so I gave up on it. So I hear you there.
And that's exactly it. Is marketing, as you know, builds on itself, right? Mm-hmm. So you're starting that momentum piece now, and this is where I get into the theory behind it, and the strategy is in between there. You're hitting your digital marketing. And you're doing your phone calls and you're doing your email campaigns or whatever the case you want to do in between there. But you have to do something to enhance it. You can't just send it out there and hope for reactive sales, or the phone's going to ring, you're going to pick it up and have a sale. That's a rare thing. So one of my clients right now, Level Up Painting, we're developing a campaign so that they're heavy into their digital marketing, social media. They go door to door with door hangers. They put signs everywhere, and this is their next step to add exposure. Exactly. So it's just building on itself. And the best words you want to hear in a marketing, from a marketing person's point of view, is someone say, "Oh, hey, I just saw that on Facebook," or "Hey, I just got a postcard for them." You've built off of two avenues. You've met them where they're at, whether they're in line at the bank or they're at their kitchen table. Yeah, you're catching them at that moment.
I just actually had coming off of a call just now with a client, and we were talking about they ran some campaigns for local TV, and they didn't have some of the same statistics that digital could provide. Similar, but not. It's sort of apples and oranges.
Right.
But my advice to him was, hey, look. If it's cheap enough attention, meaning your ad spend, isn't costing you a fortune to advertise in a particular place, more touch points, the better. Because if, relying on a Facebook or, in your case, relying solely on direct mail, if you're only having that one touch point, it limits your credibility. When you see somebody everywhere, that the number one thing about marketing is credibility, in my opinion. Like you want your business to be professional. You want to set the expectation of what it's supposed to be, and it's so hard to do that on just one platform. That you really do need to be spread out onto other things as well.
And I think that point is 100% correct. I mean, that could be, if it could be more correct, I'd say is that credibility aspect. Patriot Construction, Jan, the owner there, he said, Don DiGiulio, I can never say his name, DiGiulio, the guy who does the on-air thing, it was the best thing he ever did, because he's got an on-air personality talking about Patriot. It's just ad space. Like, he just simply bought ad space. There's nothing special about it, but you have this guy saying it. That was huge. And then add on all the other digital marketing, direct mail, which we're doing for him now, and all the things like that. So, and the reason that's important is because let's go to the statistics, right? You mentioned we have some statistics. A prospect list will get you'll get about a 2 to 4% response rate on a mailer. Just plain sent the mailer out. The phone might ring, 3 to 4% reaction rate. Great, I guess that's okay if you have a bigger price point. If you're selling $30 pins, that's not going to fly. If you're selling $2,000 packages, great. So that's okay. But you start adding that in with all your other efforts, and those percentages can leap up to almost 24% when you've got your digital marketing hit it. You've got phone calls following it up. There's exposure somewhere. They're being hit by all those angles that you're talking about. And then you have your cross-sell and upsell your clients, which is a no-brainer. Anybody who hears this, if you're not doing a mailer at all, at least cross-sell and upsell your current clientele and tell them about the other things you have. Because I'll get pigeonholed. At Ultra Print, I once asked a client, we've done all this printing for you, but we've never done your envelopes. And she looked at me, 15 years of doing business, and she said, I didn't know envelopes. I said, of course we do. As a printer, I'm thinking, duh.
Yeah.
She didn't know. So,
well, the number one barrier to do business with a company is knowing them and being comfortable with them. So when that's already taken care of, the hard part's already done. So
a basic mailer out as a cross-sell upsell opportunity with your current client base yields an 11 to 15% response rate. That's huge, and that's doing nothing more. And for us, we would send the mailer out, and then a few days later, I would call up and follow up and just make sure you got my mailer. Because cold calls are tough. People don't like to do it. But what's easy is saying, I just want to make sure you got it. That's an easy phone call, and it can start a dialogue. And most times when you've done business with them, that phone call leads to, I meant to call you. I have this or that. So, if you can do those things, that's a no-brainer. But when you're reaching, when you're doing some mailers and you're enhancing them, and you're getting things up to 24 to 40% response rate, not return, response rate, you still have to convert that. That's important. And in the digital world, the digital marketing does it great. So you'll have your Facebook ad, or you'll have an ad on Google, and it will lead you to the website, which will answer some questions, which will lead them to the contact sheet, which will then be maybe interacted with and lead to the next. You guys walk things along really well. And that's, I think, one area where the direct mail is better than digital really hurt direct mail, because you enhance it. So your direct mail piece goes out. What are you doing in the digital world that we can tie this into? Because it'd be great to send them somewhere that they can see that next step, and then they're brought to the next step. And that sales cycle, that 8 points of contact or whatever it takes to get to the prospect, a good prospect, is happening all in the background. You're not actively doing anything, picking up phone calls and going crazy. So I think that's where direct mail really hit that snag, where they started really, where the term, I didn't know they still do that with direct mail, came from digital marketing doing a great job at making it seem like they were irrelevant, and and direct mail not realizing, let's tie it in. Let's not see them as adversaries. Let's say enhancement. Exactly. And I think that's where, and I think we talked about I had a meeting with a young man, marketing director, and the first thing he said is, I didn't know they still did direct mail, which, yes, he did. But the fact is, okay, well, then great. Then you should do it. If there's no mail coming to people that's selling something, shouldn't you sell them something through that process? Absolutely. You've got the one thing direct mail offers is the 100% certainty someone will see it. Will they read it? Will they interact with it? Will they respond to it? I don't know. But there's a 100% C rate. And that's pretty impressive in the marketing world.
Yeah, a couple things on that front, as far as like the competitive nature between the industries, I guess you could say, between digital and print. There's various different causes for it, but I'd have to think that, like, one that sticks out in mind is kickbacks, when you're taking commission, from the success of a marketing campaign, which really stemmed from traditional marketing, back early on when marketing agencies kind of had their boom in the 50s and 60s, where these agencies would, and I think actually a lot of agencies still do it, where, there would be commission attached to the campaigns that they're running.
Right.
Whereas I don't know about you, but my agency, we don't take any commission. It's just a flat fee for the service, and then they pay for ads separately, on their own. We facilitate those ads for them, and we spend for them, but we're on their budget and using their payment method. So I'd have to imagine that some of that old school commission type mentality comes into mind when you have somebody else coming into this space and eating up, so to speak, some of the commission and some of the revenue. Whereas when I go in and talk to a business owner, my number one goal and care is for their business and to try and make their business successful by getting them, more customers, more patients, whatever it is, selling more product. I think that's the disconnect. I think these marketing companies, whether digital or print, there's this tunnel vision, and it's all about what their results are and not how it's benefiting the customer. And it shouldn't be that way.
And your comment about the back in the day with the ad agencies and things of that nature, you're right. And the reason that that's still the way it is because the big guys, the ones with all the names on them, the names from hearing them, they're still running it. These guys are 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, and they're still involved. And you think of an ad agency as being progressive, but it's still being run by older businessmen who think that that's how we used to do it, so we're still going to do it that way. And that stems from just obviously power trips and things of that nature. But I think you're 100% right. And the fact that, your goal is to make the business, your efforts be successful, so the business is rewarded by it, not necessarily yourself, leads to you being rewarded for it because they're going to trust you. You're a trusted source. You're a trusted marketing tool, and you can cross-sell and upsell. I know you offer a lot more than A or a lot more than B. You have multiple, resources that you can offer your clients. So and I think the collaboration that you and I had talked about, and I've talked with other companies, when I sit down and I'm saying, what else are you doing? If it's a smaller company, generally I'm not doing anything else. Well, let me introduce you to this guy, because this is someone you might want to talk to. And then you're a trusted source for even referrals, which gets even more powerful because they're going to come to you before they look into Google.
Sure.
And that's strong, especially if it happens to be something you do. I know that's happened. I've been asked, you know anyone that does signage? Like, me. It's a nice, you could avoid that going elsewhere in those instances.
Yeah. Speaking of that, there's various different aspects. What about graphic design for like what you guys do? You mentioned that it's not all just print.
Right.
Delve into that a little bit.
So in mail, obviously there's the addresses on it, right? So mail houses from a very early time, as soon as the technology was being introduced, were really into variable data. So the reason we have digital presses and not offset presses is because when we're running a postcard run of 40,000, the addresses are going on with the print and the names are changing as it runs. So it's very interactive, it changes. In a situation like an appeals package, you can have the content of the letter change because if you're thanking somebody for donating $10 last year versus thanking somebody for donating $10,000, the message may want to be a little different. You're still appreciative, but the message is going to be different. So the way that works is it's like kind of like an equation. If X equals B, then this. And we put those fields within the body of the artwork, so it just changes on the run. And then when we're obviously putting the piece together, it's got to be matched. The variable data art, which is where within the art, if you've ever received like a postcard where let's say there's a mountain and carved in it is your name. Well, you can do that kind of cool stuff too, where the name changes for everyone. It matches the last name of the person on the address, and so those kinds of things are fun to play with. They cost a little bit more. Obviously, it takes a lot of time as far as structuring that together. Once it's structured together, it's automated, so it's not like you have to do every one. It's very automated, but it sets up a little time. The basic information variable data, though, where postcard we just did for CHR and recruiting, they were trying to hit industries that have a number of employees. He's an HR company, and we just said, the name of the company. Are you looking for HR help? And it just matched the name of the company on the address. It was just a text change, but it was in the header. Just something a little bit to be more noticeable. And those things don't cost any extra money. That's just the basic. Okay. That's just basic setup. That's very simple. And we're getting more and more people, and we're urging more and more people to do that because it costs you no more money, and it's definitely going to be more noticeable. At least make you pause. The key is your brain works through osmosis sometimes. You automatically read stuff even if you don't want to. Like you cannot not read large letters. It's impossible. and so you want that reaction when they see it to just draw them back for a second and go, whoa, that's powerful stuff.
Yeah, something similar on the digital front. They don't, let's say Facebook, for instance, they don't allow you to set variables based on name or anything. But a good strategy that we've started is to call out the location. So especially for like a smaller city like Rochester, somebody scrolling through their Facebook feed, they're getting hit with CNN, they're getting hit with ESPN, all these global brands. But when they scroll across a piece of copy at the top of a post that says, hey, Rochesterians, or hey, Rochester, or hey, Gates Chili, whatever it is. That piece of familiarity, just really catches the eye and makes them pause and read it for a second. I think it helps when it's more of a small town. If we're doing that in like New York City or something like that, it probably doesn't have.
They wouldn't care as much. Well, we're all tribal in a way, right? So we all get a kick out of I'm from East Rochester. Can't get more tribal than East Rochester. I mean, it's just people we're each. This is where we're from. If you're an outsider, it's like you didn't grow up here. Like it's that mentality. So those things are unbelievably powerful, and we've instituted very similar things in some of our mailings. So yeah, without a doubt. And again, then you have that going out with a mailer, and people are just seeing it and they're noticing it. And it's cool.
Yeah, one cool thing, and I actually noticed this that before your post on it, I think you posted maybe like a week or two. The USPS, the post office preview through email, where they scan your email and they'll send you. So they had never had my email address before until I moved. And when I did my address change online, then they had my email. And then I started getting these and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. Like I personally, I'm bad at mail. I won't go to the mailbox probably like once every 3 days or so. My mail.
You saying that? I saw a statistic on people check their mail on an average once every 5 days. So really? And that shocked me. I was like, what?
But that solves for that problem, right? You get that email, you see what's coming in on a per day basis. So if that is an obstacle for direct mail marketing, you've overcome it there. Yeah. But then two, to your point of your post, now you're seeing that twice.
Yeah.
You're seeing that maybe while you're at work, browsing your email or wherever. And then additionally at home where you may be more apt to pick up the phone and call or go to a website and purchase something like that. So probably a game changer, I would think. And have you heard anything about them making that a little bit more robust?
No, well, it's a government thing. So
yeah,
it'll be slow. It'll be behind the 8 ball a little bit. But it's got potential. And I had talked to our designers about it. I showed them on my screen, actually in my email thread, I said, I want you, because it's always going to show you the address side, because that's the side the post office scans to see where it's got to go. So that panel used to be the catch-all at the end, right? We would just throw all the other things that the company does, because the whole front is talking about whatever the offer deal is. I said, this might be something to think about. This side now has more relevance than it did in the past. So I think in that regard, and I know me, and it's hard for me to gauge these things because I'm in mail now, right? So I'm now looking at it from a different perspective. It's like when I go into an event and they give me a program, I check the stitching, I check if it's cut properly. I'm not the normal person in that regard. But when I'm scrolling through it, I'm looking more intently because I'm trying to see what we're getting. During the COVID time when my wife had unemployment, I was now seeing if things from the Department of Labor were coming. So I knew what was coming, and I'd let her know, letters come and make sure you check the mail, or, because one of the kids might grab the mail and leave a pile somewhere on a window ledge or something. So I knew that this stuff was happening, but I was more intently looking. So even the junk mail was being looked at harder because I was seeing what was coming. And I just found that fascinating. I hope they expand that. I mean, can you imagine if it becomes clickable at some point?
Right.
It's just going to be awesome.
Yeah, it actually would be fairly simple from a digital perspective to at least make links or phone numbers clickable on it. Where you could you get your screenshot of it and there's a few clickable items on it. That would be huge.
Even the case of it would require some upgrade to the post office. But if this is the direction they're going, when they're scanning it anyway, it has an active QR code on it that can be scanned. And so then when you click it, it's activating that scan. There's just so much you could do. And I think, that's the outside the box stuff that, people have to start thinking about. And it's just pretty exciting. I thought it was one of the coolest things in a while. And when I signed up for it, I was like, I'll just see what this is like because I should know what it is about. And I find it really cool.
That's actually a really good point about the QR code. You mentioned before, how can direct mail sort of leverage that next step of the marketing funnel, so to speak. And I would have to think that would be a huge way. Like, hey, learn more. Here you have the QR code, and boom, you're right there.
And we're starting to do that. And it's funny because a lot of people don't know that iPhones, you just point your camera at it and the QR code's activated. You don't need a special app or anything like that. So people not knowing the tech is one of the hurdles. But we have people that design simple landing pages for a mailing so they can truly gauge the effectiveness of it. And so when they go there and then they can be redirected somewhere else, that's the page that has the offer. And then they're redirected somewhere else. But they've got that count, right? They know exactly who is responding to it. So that test and measure is fulfilled. I encourage people whenever they do it, put a QR code on there. So what if no one scans it? It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt.
Yeah. Has there ever been in your industry any worry about, we always hear every now and again on the news how bad the post office is doing and they're making measures to, be more cost effective. And I think even a couple of years ago, there was talks of very serious potential for them shutting down. You may not know this fully, but how serious are those talks typically? And how would you see that, sort of impacting your business? Obviously, I'm assuming you send most, if not everything, through the post office. But now that they're starting to get a little bit more digital and have, the preview, and so I know that you can sign up for alerts and things like that. They seem to be kind of coming around. To your point, government, they're always slow, but they seem to be sort of picking it up a little bit. What have you seen in that regard? And have you ever had a scare where oh man, if the post office goes away, what are we going to do?
Yeah, well, during the first stimulus package, there was a lot of talk about bailing out the post office was going on. And I'm a cynic in general. I went through an entire lifetime of people telling my father and I that print was dead. And it's just ridiculous. It changed, but it wasn't dead. No one was doing 100,000 impressions of anything anymore. It was smaller runs so that they could actually test and measure, and then they could change and keep it relevant. So I'm a little cynical when I hear things like that. I'm thinking it's fanfare. They just want more money, whatever the case. But I can't lie and say I didn't feel a momentary tinge of fear being the bedrock part of our industry of what then? I do like to believe that the market will overcome. So another way of marketing similar scenarios would occur. Another company popping up. The beautiful thing about capitalism is someone will come in and try to duplicate that with a profitable model,
right? And
you would hope, and then maybe you get involved in something like that. But it's been talked about for a long time that the post office is they work in the red. They just don't make any money. So it's something to keep in mind, but it's also something where you just believe that the government will bail them out in the end if they have to. The appeals, because it's more than just your postcards and stuff like that. It's your appeals packages and a lot during COVID. The reason we were able to stay open as a mail house and a communication company was all the hospitals and healthcare facilities, the purge of information they were trying to get out. So it was an information thing. It went to everybody, and it wasn't just about, they happened across it on the digital front. So there's still a huge need beyond marketing for that. So I think that's where the bailout would come in.
Yeah, I think it's probably the same in every industry. There's some sort of backbone that's kind of holding it up, and you're kind of at the mercy of that. But if it were to fall, like to your point, somebody else potentially could come in and swoop in and save the day. And one thing from a digital perspective that has worried me is regulation on Facebook or some of the other channels from government, which depending on exactly what that means may not be a bad thing. But one of the things that it didn't really have to do with government, it was more so just private practice, was Google recently announced that they are going to be limiting third-party cookies. And so what has been sort of the name of the game as far as digital marketing is, like, how do they know that I was looking at Nike sneakers over here and then I got an ad on Facebook for it? Well, that happens because in your browser you have browser cookies, and your cookies sort of track where you've been. Right. Facebook reads those cookies, knows that you're interested in sneakers, gives you an ad. Well, what Google did, which was sly, is they sort of try to put a PR slant on it. And they were like, look, we know you're fed up with this and you don't really want to deal with seeing all these ads. And we're all about the user experience and about protecting your data. So no longer are we going to allow these companies to have your third-party cookies. Well, the problem with that is, one, they were lying, because if there's any entity that is more worried about gathering data on people, it's right. Google.
No doubt.
Like, probably the number one company in the world as far as user information and data goes. And then two, they're an advertising company, so of course they want to keep all of their data in-house and not share it with a Facebook or Pinterest or whoever you're doing marketing. I don't know. It just. To me, it was funny. It was a chuckle, because on the surface, they played it off like they were being these like internet overseer protectors. But anyways, those are some of the things digitally, that scare me. Is like, hey, this is sort of historically a new platform. Like, we really break it down, it's really only about 20 years old, and I mean, my livelihood depends on it, and a lot of customers' ad spend depends on it. And it's been successful so far, but who's to say that some crazy regulation or one company comes in and changes things and messes the whole thing up?
And you have a unique situation too, where you have tech companies spending billions of dollars to block your efforts. Like, no one's blocking direct mail; it just gets there. So that's they have one job, is to get it to the place. Yeah. And you guys, though, you have to get around so many. I mean, that Google thing, you're right, it's just ridiculous. They're going to regulate themselves and shackle themselves on what they actually profit.
Right.
It's insane. But the same thing is, the rules change on the fly, and there's so many different platforms that you have to stay on top of as far as those rules changing. I get it. That's got it. But that speaks into the whole, the pivot point. Continue looking at the new ways of doing things. Don't become set. And this is the way we do it, and it works. Continuing staying on top of the tech and making sure you understand what that next move is, and working with collaborative people. Because so what if you lost one thing, but you had a team of people that did any number of things?
Right. You can adapt.
The power is there, because now you have, 2 minds is always better than 1, 3 is better than 2, and it just becomes a powerful force, and that overcomes those scenarios, in my opinion. I mean, the printing industry for a long time, paper companies were going out of business left, right, and center. I mean, we were like, well, who are we going to get paper from? We thought there was going to be a monopoly on paper. They could charge whatever they want. Thankfully that didn't happen, but I mean, what a silly thing to fear, and that actually almost came to fruition. So,
Yeah. Back to your point about blocking, advertisements. One thing, it's sort of like when you talk about computer viruses, right? Like you're always going to have people creating new viruses, and the people trying to block the viruses are always a step behind, right? Because they're reactive rather than proactive much of the time. Maybe a bad example to compare to advertising, but with advertising, what we try and do is digital marketing. What we try and do is provide valuable content. So make the content worth watching, and then people aren't going to want to block it. So that's huge. Is just, and I think digital has changed that space, because on TV, look, you only have 15 seconds, maybe 30, to really deliver your point, put your offer out there, and hope that people buy it. Because at the end of the day, we're not advertising just to share a story. Like, we are, but it's honestly to get people to buy the product or service. So when it comes down to it, if people are more apt to watch your advertising and tune in because of its value, you're going to have way less people just scroll by or disregard it or potentially try and block it, because that is possible on Facebook. You can see an ad, and in that particular ad you can block it and say, I don't want to see anything else from this company. So for us, it's a lot about hey, that we're not just going to try and make an advertisement here. How can we provide some value, some information? How can we make somebody laugh or smile? Like, what's in it for them, sort of thing. Like, hey, we understand it's a lot of what we do is interruptive marketing. You're trying to get from point A to point B, and you have to endure, quote unquote, an ad, in between. But how do we make that enjoyable? And
that's where the adaptation is coming in too. I don't know if you've noticed. I'm cheap, so I only have the base of Hulu when I watch TV. So we get the commercials, and when you put it on pause now, I don't know if you noticed on the right-hand side, just a static ad comes up now.
Oh, really?
It just sits there, just telling you what to buy. And I got laughing. I was like, when did that happen? It just crept up. And it may have been there for a long time, but now I'm noticing it. And if I don't always look at what it is now. So obviously you're being entertained by the show, so therefore you're sucked into that. But I had a post once, and I just had a puppy, just a picture of a puppy. And I went, if you looked at this because it was a puppy, please like this post. And I had it probably had more engagement than anything I've ever done, and nothing to do with my business, because it spoke to somebody. They saw something they liked, and then they were drawn into it. And that says, I mean, that's right on your point. Is it's got to be something to make them not scroll by it, not block it, not never see anything like this again. All the different options that you have. So that's got to be challenging, because that's another level of creativity. I mean, there's creativity, and then there's like creativity, right? And you have to continue to break the mold every single time.
Yeah, it is a challenge. You're trying to, you are quite honestly trying to push a product or service, but to do it in a way that resonates is tough. It's probably the biggest challenge in figuring out the right words to say. And it's especially difficult when you're doing it on behalf of another company, because you're not there every day. So you don't have repetitive opportunity to get the right shot or get the right testimonial. And so, a lot of it is kind of learning, adapting, and trying to sort of just cultivate your approach to some type of science, to where you can effectively do it, really.
Yeah, well, it's the old adage: people don't like to be sold to; they like to be helped. So, when I used to work retail in my college days, if I came up and asked somebody if they needed any help with anything, it was always a no, even though I'm watching them look through the gene wall, right? You're looking for something. Can I help you with it? No, I don't want help. But if you come back and say, just let me know if you need a different size that you don't see, they'll ask you every day, because you're helping them, you're not trying to sell them. And that stems all the way through everything we're talking about is that's what you need people, you speak semi-apologetic that you're pushing a product, but you have to make them understand that you're not pushing it. You have something they may need, and it might help you. Maybe something you've been looking for. Yeah. And that's really the challenge.
Absolutely. Yeah. Finishing up here. What is your current landscape right now as far as like we're kind of moving out of the total shutdown as far as COVID goes. Not completely out of it just yet, but I'd have to imagine that you've had talks with customers and clients on adapting strategy. But what is I guess what does the horizon look like for your business and for direct mail as a whole?
Yeah, so people are getting back into business. Reopening after all of this is really like reopening again for the first time. You have established now that people know about you, and you're a little bit more ahead of the game. But a lot of these companies are opening up from scratch again, and so for them, it's about mentioning their mistakes is irrelevant at this point, but they should have been maintaining, brand awareness. They weren't, so it's a matter of getting back out there and letting them know we're open again. You may have gone to a competitor while we've been closed. Please consider coming back to us. Some very simple messages. The construction industry, trades, exploding. These guys are hitting it hard. They're overwhelmed as it is, and they're making sure the momentum doesn't stop. So we've got construction companies, painting companies, lawn care companies. They're really hitting it hard. So the trades are really getting back in there. Tech, I think tech is going to explode. Because tech is going to be needed to get everyone out of this mess, or at least to ensure that doesn't happen again to this severity. So people are set up and working from home, and things are not, band-aided together like they were when it all hit. So I think we're going to see a lot of tech companies really reaching out to communicate with larger corporations. But that's really it. We have new die cutting machines, so we can do all the door hangers and things. So when we talk to people about a direct mail piece, we can say, especially in the contracting world, you ever, when you're doing a job, go around the neighbors and stuff and put a door hanger on there. So I really think that's the direction we're going. It's starting to really pick up. We've lost some customers, sadly enough, that have gone out of business, which is, heartbreaking, especially when you've been working with them for years.
Yeah.
But it's how it is. And I guess I would just say there's a market share to grab, whether someone's gone out of business or people were forced into an uncomfortable situation. They might be okay with going a little bit more uncomfortable and trying something new. So go out and grab that market share when they're looking. And I think that's where things are going.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the time and awesome conversation. Wish yourself and the business the best. Love your approach. I think a lot of people, like you said, have a misconception about direct mail, and I think your approach solves for a lot of those objections. So, keep doing what you're doing, and appreciate you coming on today.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Devin.
Yep.